Okay. Thank you for staying around. We're going to have Marv shortly. Just wanted to say a few words to sort of prepare us for Tisha B'Av as much as possible. Obviously, we've been preparing for the last few weeks. The theme I've tried to carry through is that sometimes in Jewish history, the Jews have been their own worst enemies. And that's true for the disunity that was in the Jewish people before the destruction of the temples, the destruction of the temples, the wars with the Romans, the Crusades. Sometimes we were our own worst enemies. The expulsions, we had our own hand in our own expulsions. We had a hand in the events of all the terrible things that happened in Jewish history. There's Yifsek, as we spoke about last Shabbat, and other events. I think it's a good time to remind ourselves of a Gemara in Gittin. Daf Yomi had it a few weeks ago, and it's the famous Gemara that deals with why the temple was destroyed. And a lot of you already probably heard the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa. We'll have to review that a little bit today as well. But that's not where the Gemara ends. The Gemara starts with the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa, but it actually says there were three reasons why, or three destructions and three reasons. So it says the Yerushalayim was destroyed because of Kamsa Bar Kamsa, and immediately after that, the Gemara says that because of a rooster and a hen, Har HaMelech was destroyed, and because of the side of a carriage, Beitar was destroyed. And it doesn't really explain immediately that. Then it goes into each story individually. And I think if we learn the stories, I think perhaps we'll see some common threads that will hopefully help us ourselves in our understanding of things. So the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa, I'm going to try to say it shortly, summarize it as much as possible, because after all, I am assuming most of you have heard the story before. Yes, no? Anybody not? Okay, so very quickly, a person was having a party. By the way, this person is anonymous. We don't know the person's name. Could have been anybody. And this person invited his friend by the name of Kamsa, and wanted to invite his friend Kamsa. And by accident, the person delivering the hallmark greeting card inviting him to the party brought it to Bar Kamsa instead of Kamsa. Bar Kamsa, by the way, usually means the son of Kamsa. So it seems like they might have been father and son. So the guy, the host of the party, liked one of them and really, really disliked the other one. How much did he dislike him? So the wrong person showed up to the party. Bar Kamsa showed up to the party, and the guy, the host, says, "What are you doing here? I didn't invite you." Says very publicly, kind of embarrassing him. And Bar Kamsa says, "Listen, I got an invitation. I'm sorry. I thought maybe trying to make peace. I don't know. So I came to the party. I'll pay for what I ate. Get out of my party. I'll pay for not only what I ate, I'll pay for what everybody ate." Guy seems to have had some means. And nevertheless, the host said, "Get out of here." And he picks him up, physically removes him in front of everybody. Nobody says a word. And Bar Kamsa is so embarrassed that he says, "I'm going to show those Jews, those people who didn't stand up for me, I'm going to show them." So what did he do? He went to the Romans and he told the Romans that the Jews aren't accepting your sacrifices anymore. There are certain sacrifices that non-Jews can bring to the Beit HaMikdash, and the Kohanim would take them, and if they were kosher sacrifices, they would sacrifice them, and that would probably be a schut, a merit for even these non-Jews. That was normal. So the Romans said, "Oh yeah, we'll send an animal and see what happens." So they send an animal. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to the Romans, Bar Kamsa sneaks in to the animal at some point and makes a gash in the eye, which for the Romans doesn't seem very noticeable. But for the Kohanim who check out the animal, it's a psul. An animal has to be completely without any deficiencies. Has to be a perfectly good animal. And you can't sacrifice something like this. So the Kohanim who knew this said, we don't know what to do. See, the Romans sent a sacrifice, and if we send it back, they might get angry. Spoiler alert, they do. And the other Kohanim say, but we can't sacrifice something like this. What do we do? So they thought about it, and somebody, I think by the name of Zachari, if I'm not mistaken. So he says, you know what? We can't sacrifice this animal. Send it back. So they send it back. The Romans are upset. They're so upset that they go and destroy the city of Yerushalayim. That's the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa. There's maybe other versions of it, different retellings, but that's the basic story. Anybody hear anything different? Okay, so that's the first story. So what's this rooster and hen? So comes along the Gemara later on, right, and says that what happened was they used to have a custom that when a man and woman were engaged, they would take the bride and groom on the wedding, and they would bring to them a rooster and a hen. Like, because these are animals that are sort of symbolic of reproduction, and there would basically be some sort of like blessing for the groom and bride and groom, that they should have many children. They should be fruitful and multiply. That is one of the mitzvot that's involved in marriage. So that was the goal of this custom. And what happened was a group of Roman soldiers burst in one day, and they took the rooster and hen from the people. Maybe they were hungry. I don't know. Maybe it's a quartering law. I don't know. Anyway, whatever they did, the people were very upset. What did they do? They attacked the Romans. They fought them. They fought back. They said, "Give us back our rooster. Give us back our hen." And of course these Roman soldiers were not alone. They had an entire army behind them, and they came in and slaughtered the people, and then destroyed this town. Right? And a third story, probably even less well known. We'll get to that. We shall get to that, God willing. Maybe it's a good discussion to have. All right, and the last story that's mentioned in the Gemara, and of course there are other stories also mentioned about other things that are the straw that broke the camel's back. There's a whole story there of a servant who basically cuckolded his not master, his teacher, and stole his wife from him, and then this teacher becomes a servant, and there's a whole terrible story there. And then the Gemara says this is when Yerushalayim was destroyed. But before we get to that, the Gemara says that there was a story involving the site of a carriage. There used to be a custom, they say, when a baby boy was born, they would plant a cedar tree, and there was also a custom when a baby girl was born, they planted a pine tree. So for every baby girl, there was a pine tree. For every baby boy, there was a cedar tree. And then whichever boy and girl got engaged, this is a beautiful custom, by the way, right? So what they would do is they would take that pine tree and they would take that cedar tree and they would build the chuppah out of those trees. Nice, right? Pretty. It's a sunrise, sunset. Okay, it's a beautiful custom, right? And what happened was the daughter of one of the Caesars was passing by in her carriage, and as she was passing by, the door of her carriage, the side of her carriage, broke. Right, and I don't know exactly if there was a warranty or anything else, but what they did was they needed to do something. She can't just walk, can't walk like a normal person. She needs to be carried around in the carriage. So they need to fix this carriage. So what did they do? They went and cut off a nearby cedar tree. That cedar tree is somebody's chuppah. That's somebody's future chuppah right there. You're destroying our custom. So the Jewish people were very upset with this, and they attacked the Caesar's daughter's caravan, and they killed them. And so, of course, the Romans heard about this, reported it back to Caesar, And Caesar then went and did battle against the Jews in Beitar and basically slaughtered them. That's the way the Gemara has it. So there's a few things that these stories all have in common. In all of these stories, first of all, the Jews are involved. It's not just Roman politics. The way if you're going to read history books and you'd see the stories of Josephus, what you'd find is there's Vespasian and this guy and that guy, and there's internal politics, and this person became an ally of this person, and they fought and they whatever. And you see, like, it's a very political sort of story of how Israel was destroyed at the time. Who? Yeah, they're always starting up, and they're actually almost always starting up. What do you notice from these stories? So first of all, has anybody heard of this custom before? Has anybody done this custom of having a cedar tree and a pine tree and making a cup out of it? And is this minhagim of not the Yekkes don't do this? No, it's not a Chabad custom. It's not a custom anymore. That custom disappeared. It's gone. Maybe because of that. But there's plenty of other customs that. Or how about the chicken and the hen? Have you ever seen that at a wedding? Is that part of the shtick at a wedding? Have you ever seen that? Some juggling hens and chickens? No, I haven't. The kaparos maybe, but not at a wedding. Right? So it's strange, right? So what seems to be one of the common threads in all of this is that the Jews stand up and fight for customs, for a pine tree, for a hen or a chicken. When didn't they stand up and fight? For somebody's honor, bar kamtzah, the party. The same people who could have, you could say, the Jewish people are meek, they're weak, they're tired, they don't want to start up with anything. For a chicken and a hen, we'll start up. For a cedar, for a pine tree, we'll start up. For somebody's honor, to keep somebody from being embarrassed, to tell somebody, calm down, let this guy finish eating and leave. You don't have to pull him out of the party. Nobody stood up for him. What are our priorities? A custom? A custom is important. Don't get me wrong. I like customs. But no custom is worth dying for. Not one custom is worth dying for. Embarrassing a person? There's stories in the Gemara of people jumping into ovens to avoid embarrassing people. Yeah? Tamar was about to die. And forget, good, not even the Gemara, in the Torah itself. Tamar was willing to die to avoid Yehuda being embarrassed. She didn't spill the beans about who impregnated her. What are our priorities? It's amazing. We go through life and we want to be good Jews, and we want to, we're here, we're in shul, we follow the customs. Many of you had a Suda Mafseket today. Some of I see most of you are wearing non-leather shoes. So these are all customs, important customs. Don't get me wrong, it's all brought down in halacha. Do we also equally try to make sure we don't avoid, embarrass people? There's the world out there, social media and everything else, they thrive on talking about people and thinking that they know the whole story just from a few lines, a few sound bites, right? They don't know the whole story. We don't know everything about everybody. We can't assume. We can't judge. And we do it all the time. And in the Jewish world right now, if you've been following the news, what's going on in Israel, there's almost a revolution going on right now with this whole change of the justice system. Anybody familiar with this? It's I know, but depending on which side of the fence you're on, there's different ways to look at the whole thing. Basically, I mean, there's really no way to summarize it without giving away your politics. But I think the best way to say it is that the current government, that some people claim is trying to take too much power, is just made a law restricting the courts that don't have a constitution regulating them. That's pretty fair assessment. That's about as good as it gets without getting into what my opinions are. So you which way do you go? Like, with the courts, with the government? Maybe the country should have a constitution. Maybe, maybe sounds like an idea. So most countries do anyway. But what ends up happening is what we have is there's literally fighting in the streets now in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Heard about this? Fighting, like physical, not just protests, not just waving flags. It's nuts, and this time of the year of all time, right now, when we're trying to learn about how to deal with each other and how to have peace and respect each other. This is when they're calling each other Hitler. That's a common thing to call somebody that you don't agree with, especially in Israel nowadays. Can you imagine? Anyway, so that's Tisha B'Av. That's why we still have Tisha B'Av today. I'm not blaming the country of Israel, God forbid. I'm just saying we in our own communities, in our own ways, we all have people that we're pushing aside and not realizing what the real priorities of Judaism are. We've got our number one priority, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Start with that, because that's the source of all the Torah. It says, and Rabbi Kiva says, right, love each other like you love your neighbor like you love yourself. And then once you're able to do that, then you're fulfilling all of the mitzvot of the Torah, if you're doing it properly. The customs, chickens, birds, whatever else, trees, that's all just stuff that's gone by the wayside. We don't have those customs anymore, and we're still Jews. Without those customs, we're still 100% Jews. You know what I'm saying? But if we stop respecting each other, then we've really lost it all. It's just something to think about these days of Tisha B'Av. I'm going to give you a few minutes now. We're going to daven Mariv in a few minutes. I'll give you a few minutes. If you have any questions, you can ask. But this is a good time to look over the Machzor, the keynote book, and hopefully we should all have an easy, meaningful Tisha B'Av.